Norman, let's just go right back a bit first of all before you got into films. Obviously, you, part of your love was design and architecture and drawing and creating that world that you then went on to. How did you get into the industry originally? What was your background?
Well, I worked for a company that did advertising and illuminated signs and things of that nature. And we had a call from Shepperton Studios, and they asked me if I'd go down and see the people and see what they wanted, which I did. And I was taken onto a stage down there, which was a new experience for me. And the stage was full of Chinese, a big Chinese set, and it was actually one of the last of the road. It was the last of the road Hong Kong films that had Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, and Dorothy Lamour, wasn't it? And I was actually totally impressed, totally gobsmacked by the whole concept of filming these things in a stage. I had no idea up to that point that that's what happened. And as time went on, I duly did some designs for them that they approved of, and we provided the signs. Then I went down when the stage was full of Chinese people on bicycles, rickshaws, and I was taken fully by it. And I was shown some other sets. One of the stages had a big man-of-war on it, built full-size man-of-war sailing ship. Another set had a baronial hall, and various things. By this time I was totally hooked on and quite determined to get into the film industry, which eventually I had a call about a year later, just before my wife had her first baby, saying there was a possible vacancy at MGM. MGM had a studio in Elstree at that time. So I went along, got the job, and started on a film called Champagne Flight, and that's really how it all started. It was very much a matter of stroke of luck, really, you might say, or destiny or something like that.
What was it about the industry that really lit your fire? What was it about it that you fell in love with?
Well, I suppose really creating the sets, creating the situations within a four-wall controlled environment. Like one of the things that we did on Champagne Flight was to shoot on the interior of a Boeing, not a Boeing, I don't think they were around then, but a big airliner on a stage with big puffy white clouds made of cotton wool, I remembered. And things of that sort, make-believe really, I suppose, because I had no idea that happened. And I felt that I'd found what I wanted to do, and I have to say I was very fortunate in doing what I wanted to do. As Robert said, it's a matter of make-believe really, and the better the make-believe, the more people believe it. So I ended up in a situation that I really enjoyed. And as you say, I was interested in art and architecture, so that fulfilled all those sort of needs really. And for me, at that time there were no film schools, so I learned my work in the studios really, both at, well not both, but Pinewood, Shepperton, Elstree, and other studios too actually. Later I worked at Universal and studios in the States for various films.
And in the early days, you were working on films like Thunderball, TV series The Saint. I mean, all iconic programs and films that people would have heard of.
Yes, after the Champagne Flight, there was a vacancy at on the Saint series, and Roger was very big then, Roger Moore, wasn't he? And I learned an awful lot about that, actually, about filmmaking on that series, because I was fortunate enough to work for a very good art director. So I learnt a lot in a short space of time. In fact, it was like a 2-year apprenticeship in some ways, because I was there for 2 years working on the Saint. And then my first film after that was Thunderball, which was a whole new experience, new studio, and a very exciting prospect of working on a Bond film. But one of the things that made me interested was seeing Goldfinger before I joined the film industry. And that set me tingling really, because I was so thrilled with that film, and consequently, as I said, I duly made it.
And then that sort of career-defining moment in many ways when you got the opportunity to work on Star Wars. But how did that come about?
Well, I was working on a film in Mexico with for John Barry, who later I worked for again. And one day John said to me, "There's some people coming down from Hollywood to see the cameraman about some space film." And he said that maybe they might interview me as well. Would you be interested? I said, well, prospects at home were pretty bleak at that time, and I would certainly said yes. George Lucas duly came down, saw this cameraman, a wonderful cameraman called Jeffrey Unsworth, who's since died, did interview John, and he got the job. And that was my introduction to Star Wars, really. Although I did work on another film before Star Wars because of the timing and so on. But most of the art department started just before Christmas, which is unheard of at that time, to employ people just before Christmas and then give them 2 weeks' pay for nothing. So we started 2 weeks before Christmas and started shooting in March in Tunisia, which was really unheard of for a film of that density. And the producer of the film, called Gary Kurtz, and George Lucas, they made a tremendous deal with the studio that we took over the whole studio, because it almost empty. It was at a time when TV was growing really, and so the films were waning. So audiences were getting less, and people were making less films. So we were grateful to be working, actually, I have to say, when Star Wars came along.
But at a time when you were making that film, there was a sense that nobody really knew where it was going, whether it was actually going to be finished at some points, and what the actual finished product was going to be like.
Well, some people, we always get people like this that said they knew it was going to be a success all along. Most of us had no idea. Most of us, if I'm brutally frank, which I will be, were just glad to be working for a good company. The wages were paid every week, and it was a jolly good thing to work on, and interesting, like something we'd never worked on before. But nobody had any idea that it was going to be the success that it is. In fact, I don't think we actually got the green light, that is, to actually go ahead and make the film, until January sometime. So we were preparing what we could prepare, and then we had the green light and ran all the way, really.
Was there a moment when you were in the middle of dressing the sets and doing your art direction that you suddenly thought, hang about, this could be something special? Or wasn't it until you saw the crew showing then? Well,
I suppose one of the iconic scenes, that the light began to dawn when we had a scene in the desert in Tunisia where 3PO appeared, this gold man, glittering, a robot glittering, and R2, and this frame was such as in the sand dune, and I thought, this is special. This is sort of special, and the light began to dawn. This could be something extraordinary, or just a flash in the pan, I don't know, but it had. George said to me glibly one day, he said, all you have to do is get the right script, get the right actors, and the film makes itself and it'll be successful. Well, I think that's something of an understatement, I think.
And in terms of the team that you were working in as well, not just on Star Wars, but the others as well, you know, John Barry, production designer, well respected, Ralph McQuarrie is a concept artist as well. Getting those people together, history has proven what a great mix that was.
Yes, absolutely. They were. Well, John was sadly died, as I've said earlier. Was a very talented man, highly intelligent, great sense of humour, and someone that I'd always worked for whenever I could. And there's not much more I can say about him, really. He's just a great loss. I remember at his funeral, Stanley Donen came along, Stanley Kubrick, all these people that respected him came along, and we all did. It was a very sad day, and we stopped shooting for a day, actually, which is unheard of in his honour, really.
So when you took on the mantle of production designer for Empire, and then on to Raiders and to Jedi, big boots to fill. Well,
absolutely. I was never particularly ambitious, really, and it almost came by accident because John was asked to direct a film for Stanley Donen, and sadly it didn't work out for whatever reason. But because John was doing the film, directing the film, they needed someone to carry on fill his boots really. Not that I filled his boots, but I certainly carried on. And it was a huge responsibility really, and I never flinched from that. And I remember working almost for about 11 months without a day off because I was so concerned and determined to make a go of it really, and it sort of worked. So I was very happy, very happy.
And from there, in terms of the other films, I know you talked a lot about Empire of the Sun. We got Alien 3, Mission Impossible, all these great opportunities, these very famous films throughout your career. You say it's luck, but people we've spoken to, like Kathy, say, well, it was down to talent and because you got a good team around you and you were good at what you did or exceptional at what you did.
Well, I think having a good team around you is what it's all about, really. And I have worked for some wonderful people, really, like John Barry and Elliot Scott, who I suggested him for the second Raiders, actually, because Stephen had asked me to do Empire. And they're great mentors, really, people that know about the business and knew how to create these sets and so on, and were just charming, delightful people to work for anyway. So I was very fortunate in that respect. But it's something I never set out to do, but it just happened, really. Just happened.
When you look back on your time in the industry, are there any particular highlights, or was it just all a great experience?
Well, I think when looking back, one tends to only think of the good things, really. And I've certainly had my share of good experiences. But I can't say I've had bad experiences, but maybe some not quite as happy as others. But I think one of my worst experiences was being in Vienna on a film where we're out on location and I've never been so cold. That made me really depressed. Just being so bitterly cold, and you tend not to expect that in Vienna.
But you were, in other films, you were flying all over the world to great locations, scouting areas. I mean, the opportunities the industry gave you, incredible.
Absolutely. I have to say I've seen so many states in America, looked at so many of the Caribbean islands for Anne Bonny, Misses of the Sea with Paul Verhoeven. Worked in Mexico, worked in Yugoslavia, worked all over the place, really. A real gypsy. And my wife would come with the children up for 6 weeks or 8 weeks during that period. So she's been very patient, I have to say. So I decided when I came to Cheltenham I wouldn't be doing anything else but stay at home. And that's what I've done. I miss it at times. There are times when I think it would be good to be doing something, but then I probably wouldn't be sleeping at night if I did. I've had 1 or 2 calls, but I've been valiant enough to turn them down. So people stop ringing now, which is a good thing, really.
But you've still got an into the movie industry in the fact that you're a member of the Academy, so you still get a vote for the Oscars.
Yes, indeed, for the in all categories, really. And the voting is just due to come up in a short space of time. It's in 2 phases. First for the nominations, and then for the final winners in all categories. So it's something I take very seriously when I do actually get around to voting.
So what does that entail? Watching all the films and...
Watching them all, yes, absolutely. And you have to be ruthless enough to say, if it's not up to scratch, take it off and put another one on, really. It's always a temptation to see it all done, but I think at the moment I've got about 80 films to look through, something like that. And they're from all over the place, all different standards. Some are British, but mostly they're American films. And they do a great selection of documentaries on all sorts of documentaries that I'm best foreign film, best documentary and so on, that I really find interesting.
And in terms of the way you worked and your team worked, one of the things we were mentioning earlier, that you were saying there's a book of American production designers and you're in there, but actually yes, you're proud to be British and the British team around you, because British skills within the movie industry, it's still to this day well respected around the world. Look at the films that are still being made in Pinewood and elsewhere.
I think so. I think we probably have some of the best craftsmen in the world, I would say. I think the Spanish are great at free plastering, but as our people are, but they're not so disciplined at casting and so on. The carpenters, some of our carpenters can make a wreath at the bottom of the staircase with flowing handrails and stuff, which you wouldn't expect them to do. They're some brilliant craftsmen we have. You have to think of what the set's going to look like, and sometimes at night I would have a pad by my table, and I've actually drawn a little scribble of a set, what the set I thought would look like. Go through the procedure of doing a sketch, getting the drawings done, the director to approve it, and then they shoot it, and then it's out, not seen in the film because it's superfluous. There are a couple of sets in Star Wars actually, but it's that's the great thing about George actually. He's quite ruthless with his own work. If it's half a minute too long, it's out. Mm. Every frame has to pay for itself in a sense. Mm. And he's unlike some directors, he's quite ruthless really. It has to earn its keep, and sometimes the prices, the sets that you've done are not needed.
You've just got to take it, haven't you?
You've got to take it on the chin, absolutely. Yeah.
You've got a great story, haven't you, on Empire, when you designed and built the carbon freezing chamber, and then you brought the director in. Tell us about that.
Yes, indeed. Up until that point, I thought I was really very friendly with the director because I liked him as a man. And as the weeks went by, I took him onto the set every week to show him the set. It's such a strange set, so he'd have no surprises on the day. So I took him the Friday before we were shooting on the Monday, and I said, well, this is it, Kirsch, it's all ready. And he walked around and he said, I can't shoot this. This is not possible. How can I shoot this? And I said, well, when you design a set, you have to have some idea how to shoot it, otherwise it's impossible. So I went through my little routine. He said, I can't shoot this. See you Monday. And I went home and said, after a couple of hours, she said, you're a bit quiet this weekend. On the Monday, I was there first, almost opening the stage really, and everybody came in, and Kirsch walked in and walked through the action with the actors, and he said, he turned to me and he said, this is the best set in the film, thank you very much, he said. And I was, so they're the sort of tensions that you have to have. It's such an unusual set really, and I think he had no walls or nothing known to work to, and he was very grateful actually, and so was I.
So this is Return to Oz.
This is Return to Oz. This is not quite as successful as its predecessor, but nevertheless an interesting film. I think it may have been slightly too serious in one or two places, sadly, but a very enjoyable film to work on. And I was presented with a challenge of producing a set that had mirrored ceiling, mirrored floor, mirrored walls, which was a challenge, but it worked out. And the cameraman was still talking to me at the end of the film. So
I was going to say, he must have been really pleased that he had a room full of mirrors.
Yes, but it surprisingly went very well. And this is something else that the art department does really. This is, these are the same set pieces, but painted different colour and rearrangement with some additions. Revamping the set is something that is an art form, if you like, really, because it saves lots and lots of money. It seemed like something is, a different set, but given a couple of weeks to change it over, it saves an enormous amount of money and can be equally as effective. But it is part of the same place, so it did work okay.